Hi there. This is a very quick overview of the basic wiring and plumbing of the Rotec R2800, and to be frank, the 3600. There's not a lot of difference between them. So I'm just going to quickly go through a few things. We'll look at the ignition, the plumbing and the oil, the plumbing for the oil and the fuel, and some wiring. Basically, when you get the Rotec engine, you'll get two of these harnesses, and this is the ignition harness. And really it's quite basic. That black wire there is an earth. This wire here, which is marked tachometer. See if we can not get that reflected. Tachometer output, so that would go to your electronic tachometer. And that there is going to go to power. So that one will be marked the 12 volt ignition switch. So basically that one there would go to your mag switch. You're effectively your ignition switch for left and right. Now there'll be two of these in the engine, one for the left system and one for the right system. All Rotec engines now have dual electronic ignition, so there'll be a parallel system with two of these, each with their own. So that plugs to the coil, that plugs into the distributor, that plugs into the module, and that is grounded under the module. And that is it. As I said, you've got a tachometer output, and that would go to your mag switch. Now your mag switch is not going to be a switch that's switching earth, it's going to be switching power. So this is a powered system. So that could not be simpler. And as for wiring, I get people asking me about the wiring gauges or questioning the wiring gauge. You could use this gauge, the gauge that we've used here, for everything on the engine except for obviously the alternator battery wire and the heavy starter motor battery wire. But everything else on the engine, you know, the coil wiring, your sensor wiring and all that, you could just use the same gauge that we've used. It's plenty heavy enough. All right, so now let's take a look at this wiring. So here's our ignition coil here, right? This is the Bosch coil, and two of these are supplied with the engine. Now, obviously the high tension lead just plugs directly into the distributor cap. Now, if this was a later engine, it would have two of these coils, one for the left cap and one for the right cap. So you just parallel everything in double. Now you can see here, there's the wiring harness. There, that plug there that I'm showing there. That is the plug that just connects in from the wiring harness. That one right there, right? And likewise, you see here what have we got? So here you've got the module. Now I've actually got an air hose that's keeping everything nice and cool. And you see, if we lift that up there, you'll see there's the module in there, which is supplied with the Rotec ignition. Now, there'll be two of those on the later engines and the 9-cylinder and the later 2800s. There's the earth wire from the harness. There is the harness, right? Now, if we come around the other side, I think I'm connecting to this side. Yep, and there's the pigtail. There's the pigtail, and there's that wiring, this one here. The black, red and white wire. You just simply plug it into the distributor. The later engines, as I said, will have two of these. Each distributor will have a pigtail coming out of each one. And that's it. There's nothing more to do. Just plug in the coil, plug in the distributor, connect your tachometer if you need to, and have the power supplied to this terminal. You can cut that off if you don't use that, and that would connect to the wiring that's coming from the positive switching on your positive switched magneto switches, left and right. And that is the wiring. Now on the starter motor, as you can see here, has its own solenoid. So that is just a heavy battery wire that is coming from the main master solenoid. So when I turn the ignition on, you hear that big clunk. That is supplying power to the starter motor solenoid. That is, of course, on the cold side. Now, on the starter motor, there's also a small wire here, that white wire, which just plugs onto a blade terminal, also on this solenoid, which is just a bit out of view now. And that's it. When you press the starter button, all you're doing is supplying power, 12 volt switched power from the starter button, which on my aircraft is right there. There's my starter button. And then it just energizes that solenoid, closes the contact, connects the battery to the starter motor, and off she goes cranking. Unlike a traditional aircraft engine, you don't have a separate starter solenoid. That is the starter solenoid. So you just connect your battery wire straight to that, and your pull-in wire is that white wire there. You can just see it there. It's just, as I said, it's a bit out of view. It's tucked around the side, but there's a spade terminal on the back side. I think it's just there. Oh, you might just be able to see it there. You can just see it there. Yeah, there it is there. See it there? Just under there. There's a spade terminal, and that's the solenoid energizer. That'll energize the solenoid and shut those big contacts which drive the starter motor and crank the engine. So that's the starter motor. Now, as you can see, you're going to need a big heavy earth strap on the engine somewhere. I've got one here. It's got to be, make sure it connects through to the body of the engine. Now, alternator, we've just simply got, I've just got like a 5mm battery wire there, right? And I've also got a T-plug on the back of the alternator for the warning light, and the warning light is the yellow wire. Now, you don't have to use the warning light, and the vertical wire there, the black and the white with black trace, that's the vertical wire of the T. That's the ignition power wire for the alternator. Now that can, if you like, you can just bridge that directly under the main battery terminal there, which is there, which is just there. You can just see it there, yeah. Just behind that hose there. See with that white cap? That's about a 4 to 5mm wire. Now I've actually taken that power wire off the cold side of the starter motor battery. It's the same connection. Now if you wanted to, you could, if you didn't want to use the warning light, you could just take that black and white wire there and loop it under that 6mm lug there on the alternator battery terminal. So when you turn the master on, the main master, it powers the alternator up at the same time. What else have we got for wiring? You know, that's about it. I've got an electric scavenge pump here, which I'm using to suck oil out of the engine, but we'll talk about that later. And the only other thing I've got is, so yeah, you've got your 3 lines here, typically 4 lines would be used. What have I got there? Because I've got 2 on that side. So I've got 2 lines on that side going through to the tank, and I've got 3 lines on this side going through the tank, and they're just all return lines. And I've just hose clamped them onto the top of the tank there because they are low pressure. There's no pressure on those at all. And then on the bottom of the tank, I've got my pickup there. There's my pickup line. And that is, they're just 3/8 lines, and they're going to, you know, you've got your scavenge pump outlet there. That's returning oil back to the tank. Then I've got my electric scavenge pump here. That's sucking oil from the bottom of the sump. I've added a second port on the sump, and I've used one of them on the electric pump, and that's sucking oil out of the engine after shutdown. It's what we call a clean kit. That second fitting there, the one below, that is the engine-driven scavenge pump, and that is taking oil from the bottom of the mini sump all the way up that line there, right to this side of the engine scavenge pump. Just there, right next to the fuel pump there on the left-hand side. Right, and then of course the oil's going on the other side and then back to the tank. And then what else have we got? So then I've got a breather line, which is on the top of the sump there, just there. That's a breather line on the top of the mini sump. Again, that migrates its way all the way back to one of the fittings on the top of the tank. And that's that. Now on my filter block here, pretty straightforward. I've got my pressure relief line returning back excessive oil pressure back to the tank. One of the lines on the top of the tank, any one you like. On the bottom side here, I've got oil pressure out, which is furthest away from the plug, oil pressure out, and that is going to the engine. That's going right through along between the cylinders, and, well, you can't see it because I've got a baffle there, but it's just going, yeah, right there. Oh, I can't see it there. Yeah, there. To the engine. On the later engines, that fitting is actually on the front side of the cylinders, but it's the same port. And then on that filter block on the other side, the side that you can't see, on the back side, that's the side that's going to so that's oil pressure out, filter return, relief return, and that there is oil pressure in from the pump. So you're connecting that one to the oil pressure pump. It's a bit difficult to see, just see it there. So that one on the left there, that's pressure out from the main pressure pump. And then on the inlet side, which is right there, on the inlet side, which is furthest away from the camera, on the oil pump, that's going through the firewall and picking up from the bottom of my oil tank right there. So it's going through the firewall, that's the pickup. And then that's going through the firewall there and to the alternator side of the oil pump. And then on the starter motor side of the oil pump, it's going to the inlet of the filter block. And then the outlet of the filter block is going to the engine there. And then the relief, any oil pressure relief or excessive pressure is being bled back to the tank. And the only other thing on the tank I've got is a breather line, which is I've got going down the whole length of the fuselage and popping out at my tail wheel just to keep all the oil away. You'll see I've got a pipe right there, and there's the mess. So it keeps my belly clean. I've just got I'm going to say that's I don't know, about a half inch aluminium tube connected to a hose that runs all the way down the fuselage. But a lot of people, and including on my Flybaby, will just run that hose down the firewall and just sort of poking out around here somewhere. And that's certainly how I've got it on the Flybaby, but it does make a messy belly, so I thought I'll do it differently on this. That's it. Now, most of the oil lines, it's a good idea on the oil lines on the suction side of the pressure pump and the suction side of the engine scavenge pump. Keep those diameters as big as you can afford. You know, 3/8 minimum. I've just used basically 3/8 on everything on the engine, and it's worked out fine. I've got about 100 or so hours on it, and it works fine. So, but if you wanted to improve your scavenge performance on the suction side of the oil pump there, scavenge pump, you could run a larger line, you know, possibly even bigger than 3/8. But 3/8 would be a minimum. On the pressure side, on the outlet side, you know, 3/8 to 5/16 is fine. And as you can see, I haven't used any crimp lines here. These are all barbed push lock lines, which I've used over the years, and I find they work fine. They're just all push lock lines. I've just got an extra earth here. Make sure you've got a good earth to the engine. I did have slow cranking problems with mine, but it turned out to be another issue. It had nothing to do with my earths, so I don't really need all those earths. But yeah, make sure you've got a good earth strap on your engine and you should be good to go. As you can see, I've just got some zip ties around my distributor caps to put a bit of extra tension on those clips, and it keeps the caps nice and firm. Just a big zip tie catching the ears of those distributor cap clips, and that's it. I hope that helps.